Once again, good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. We told you earlier, our guest tonight is the former spokesperson of the organizing committee of the Anglophone General Conference, Dr. Simon Mundzu. Doctor, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
Well, thank you very much, Mimi. Thank you for having me.
You are part of the organizing committee of the AGC, and apart from that, you are equally the former UN Secretary General's Deputy Special Representative for Ivory Coast. That was between 2014 and 2016. Thank you so much once again for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank
Doctor,
you very much.
Many people would want to find out from you, just less than 1 week to the holding of the AGC, which was finally postponed, you decided to step down. What were your motives?
Well, it was very, very simple, actually, because as you say, it was about 9 days to the expected convening or the expected meeting. And, you know, on the 12th of November, the conveners had a review meeting in Yaoundé, which I attended. And the reason why we held it in Yaoundé was that the following day, the 13th, we were going to have a meeting with the head of the European Union delegation to Cameroun, all the 6 resident ambassadors of EU member countries present in Cameroon, the US Embassy, the Canadian High Commission, the British High Commission, and the coordinator of the UN system. So it was a very important meeting in Yaoundé. And indeed, the meeting took place. And then in the evening, we also had a very important meeting with a delegation of visiting heads of regional offices of a number of UN humanitarian agencies like WFP, WHO, which are based in Dakar, but they were on mission to Cameroon and they requested a meeting with us. All of that went very well. And then we had a meeting in the evening of the 13th to review the way the day had gone. And in the course of that meeting, the Cardinal informed us that considering that we had encouraged him to establish contact with Cameroonians in the diaspora, especially those in favor of independence or separation, he had taken our advice, our recommendation, and contacted them, and that he was astonished that quite a few of the leaders he spoke with indicated to him that they had no objection to the conference except the fact that I was associated with this organization. You know, now it is remarkable that the day before, so Monday the 12th, Chris Anu issued yet another audio video, in which once again he said that the meeting was not going to take place, the IG was against it, they were decreeing a 5-day lockdown of the territory, calling Cardinal Toumi and I collaborators of the Yaoundé regime, etc., etc. So putting all of that together, I said to the Cardinal and to the Right Reverend moderator of the PCC who were present, that if my person, if according to the Ambazonians or separatists, independent fighters, if my person was going to be a stumbling block to the holding of this conference, then I think that the honorable thing to do would be to pull out, because everyone knows that I worked very hard in terms of advocating national dialogue for solving this problem, even harder in terms of gathering momentum for the convening of an Anglophone gathering of sorts, and that I worked very hard supporting the conveners in the preparation of the conference up to that point. So I didn't want us 9 days to the event to find that it didn't take place because of the person of Simon Mundzu.
But you said you were not the only one threatened.
Yes, indeed.
Even Christian Cardinal Toumi was equally under serious threat.
Yes.
Many are curious why you particularly decided to pull out.
No, indeed.
Whereas you were not the only one receiving threats.
Yeah, maybe if it was only for the threats which I had been receiving for a very long time. Or let me say that there are 2 different issues. One was threats to my person, threats to my life. Now, those ones had an influence in my decision or my announced indication on that same day that even though I would support the convening of the preparation of the conference until the eve, I might not be in Buea, because we know what has been happening to people. And it's true that the threats against me had intensified of late, and they were very
even
specific.
after the resignation?
No, I'm saying before the resignation.
What about after you announced your resignation?
Well, since I announced my resignation, I haven't seen any specific threats, and they haven't been brought to my attention. Maybe they're circulating, but they haven't come to my attention. On the other hand, shortly after I announced that I was stepping down, you will remember Chris Anu and others. Chris Anu issued another edict, another decree from the interim government saying that they were lifting the 5-day lockdown, which was one of my concerns, that our people should not be subjected to 5 more days of unnecessary suffering just because Simon Mundzu is coordinator of this thing. An indication that your presence was really the problem, according to you. That is what you think. Well, I mean, that is what the conference finally did not take place. Doctor. No, I mean, exactly, because it was postponed. In terms of sequence of events, remember that we are on the 12th and 13th, and on the 12th and 13th, the threat to the conference, as reported by the conveners after the contact between the cardinal and our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, is that Simon Mundzu is a problem. We are on the 12th and 13th. And so that decision was taken that we should rescue, I offered to rescue the conference, if this was the only threat, by doing what I did. Now, it transpired that 2 or 3 days later, the conveners got an indication from the government, which I understand was never formalized. It's not as if they received a formal letter from anyone, but they got a verbal indication, I'm told, from the duo of Buea, saying that the government would want the conference to be postponed while they take time to deal with a number of issues. That is what the conveners are actually exactly waiting for. Yeah, Doctor, the conference, this is not taking place for the first time, because the Anglophone crisis is as old as the history of Cameroon. Yes. There was the AAC1 and the AAC2, and Cameroonians, especially the English-speaking population, are aware of the role that you actually played. Do you see yourself on the right side of history as far as the other Anglophone conferences are concerned? Oh, yes, I do. I see myself on the right side of history. You know, if you're on the right side of history, yes, why would they not want you to be part of this Anglophone conference? No, I am on the right side of history. You know, in matters of civic protest, civil disobedience, and all of that, the gains are incremental. Already in 1993, it was a major breakthrough for us to organize a gigantic meeting of that kind of Anglophones. Now, in the intervening 25 years or so, the movement lost steam. A new episode emerged. Not only the movement, but the resolutions. What became of the resolutions? Exactly. Because that's the question many are posing, asking. Many are asking that question in terms of we met, we resolved, we proposed, and then nothing happened. What makes you think this time anything would happen? Did you do your best to make sure that some of the resolutions were taken into consideration by the government of Cameroon? How far did you go, Doctor? We did in terms of conveying the resolutions to the government. And that was all? And that was all. I mean, we were not the government. You couldn't get the government to do that. So what were you planning to do this time? What I'm saying that, well, I'm drawing attention to the fact that there are 2 critical game changers now, and I think that we ought to be constantly aware of that. The first, which makes this episode different from that of 1993-1994, is the involvement of the general population of the Northern and Southwest. In 93-94, it was a business of an elite group that we were. This one is a general. This one is a people's thing. And it is the power of the people, the pressure of the people, not necessarily through violence, but just determination. Remember that the no school call, the Monday ghost towns were not decreed by people who were carrying arms. These were demanded by the consortium, and the population followed. It tells you that it is possible that the population can, through non-violent means of protest, sustained and followed by the general masses, can produce results. And we should persevere on that route, number one. Number two, as a result of this crisis, the international community has become aware of the Anglophone problem and the justice of our cause. The fact that our people has been suffering this marginalization, domination, assimilation all this while, and we were kind of weeping as well in silence, unknown to the rest of the world. Now the whole world knows. As you can see, the issue being discussed in various parliaments and so on. What I say is that when the issue is discussed in those parliaments and go through the records, Mimi, you'll find that they do not take the approach of supporting separation.
Could there be some sort of sign of hope?
Yes.
On the possible solutions coming anytime soon, because this crisis has been going on for close to more than 2 years now?
Absolutely. I believe that with the international attention being focused, with the fact that there are all these ramifications on our society, 1993, 1994, there weren't people in the bushes. There weren't people in exile. There weren't people as refugees. The houses were not burned. So there is the humanitarian dimension of this crisis, which is attracting the international attention. Community. And through that, we have an opportunity now. We have the best opportunity to make a political push in terms of advocacy in the international community. But once again, I say that is in terms of a return to a structure of governance that puts an end to our grievances without necessarily amounting to a separation, a breakup of the country.
You still maintaining your federalist stance?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Doctor, before becoming the Deputy Special Representative for Ivory Coast, you equally serve the United Nations in different capacities. The government of Cameroon has actually created a committee, announced the creation of a committee that is the Disarmament, Demobilization and the Reintegration Committee. We saw what happened in Ivory Coast, where you were representing the United Nations. We saw what happened in Namibia, Liberia and other countries in the African continent. What is your take as far as this move by the government of Cameroon is concerned? Because many are arguing that it's not timely. What is your view, Doctor?
No, I mean, you're right to highlight the fact that I worked in those settings, because indeed, in a UN peacekeeping mission, an integrated mission such as we've had in the last many places in the last 20, 30 years, there comes a point where the demobilization, if you like, the disarmament, demobilization, reintegration, and even reinsertion, so you can have a second hour of ex-combatants, becomes critical.
At this point in Cameroon,
now,
at this point in time in
Cameroon, I have to say that
particularly the Anglophone crisis.
I'm astonished. I was astonished to hear this announcement by the government creating this national DDR committee for various reasons. Number one, you just mentioned timing. It is unusual that you create a committee for disarmament, demobilization, reintegration when hostilities are still on. You can't do that. You can't carry out an operation like that in the midst of an ongoing war. It doesn't happen. So I don't understand why the government is proposing this at this time. Number two, when you have a DDR program, it results from agreement between the belligerents, between the fighting forces on both sides or all sides, if there is more than one side. That it's time for us to cease fire and they come together. You know, so you cannot, again, in a conventional DDR, this one sounds a lot unconventional, you don't have a unilateral DDR where one of the parties says they are disarming. Now, and then number three, what is remarkable about this, when I read the decree, is that it seems to me rather more as an incitement to desertion of armed group fighters, because the offer of peace is not addressed to the formations like the commanders of the armed group fighters taking a loan or as a group.
It should be an individual
individual fighters. So
which might not really be productive.
Exactly. So it might not be productive.
So Doctor, before we go, because time is against us, if you were called into the new government of Cameroon, because Cameroonians are expecting appointments, would you accept?
Well, let me put it this way. It always would be an honor for a person to serve their government. But from time immemorial, Simon Mundzu's attitude has been that you don't join a government just for the sake of joining a government. You join a government when you find that that government has a mission, has a vision that would contribute.
What about the current government? I
don't know about the current government. I'm not so sure that Cameroonians are happy with the way in which we have been administered. Right across the board, take any area of concern. We do, in fact, need to rethink the constitution of government, the role of government, the composition of government. Before
you can accept an appointment.
Yes. So
thank you, sir.
If there were to be indications that we are going decidedly in the direction of reform, renovation, rethink, and all of that, I would join a national effort to do that. But if it's a matter of joining a government just so as to be one more minister enjoying benefits and privileges, that has never been my concern.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us tonight on Talking Point. We hope to have you some other time again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
To our viewers, it was equally a pleasure having with us in this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. Wishing you a blessed stay in the company of our programs until we meet again. Goodbye.